Hello and welcome to Wallcrafts. My name is Miki and I'm excited to share with you how to sew this charming and versatile swan bag. It's a delightful little project for anyone looking for a practical yet stylish everyday bag. This bag's standout features include its continuous strap design that flows seamlessly from the body. This means we only need 2 pieces of fabric to cut out. The curved edges and roomy pockets add both functionality and a soft, elegant touch. We'll be using my digital sewing pattern, link available in the video description below. All the sewing steps for this bag are detailed in the pattern as well. Yes, we do have a format for projectors, as well as A0 and tiled printed home for this video and the pattern too. Unless I say otherwise, the seam allowance is 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimeter. This video sews view B, where the edges are finished by themselves and does not require any additional materials except for the fabrics and interfacing. While this bag only has a couple steps, it does need a bit more of precision and control of your sewing machine, and also some patience because you need to be able to hand sew an opening at the end. So let's bring an open mind and see what new things we can learn from making this bag. Here's what you need. The pattern provides some more layout options depending on whether your fabric has a nap. So grab the fabric from your stash and let's get started. My exterior fabric is a drape of some sort, I'm not sure what, but it's very long and narrow. And my lining fabric, it used to be a cream colored bed sheet, which I dyed with avocado, but that's the story of another day. Pinning my exterior and the lining together, I cut everything out. And there we have all the pieces. Now it's time to start sewing. The first couple of sewing steps are the same with view A of this bag, which is our previous video. I'll post a link to that video in the description below. That video tutorial covers these steps in a lot more detail, so please check it out over there. For this video, view B, we're just gonna quickly go over them and then we'll focus on the last couple steps that are different from view A. First, interface the exterior bag and pocket. Then sew all the darts on the exterior and lining and press down for the exterior, up for the lining. Next up, sew the pocket, exterior, and lining right side together. Trim the curves and corners and turn right side out. Press it well, then top stitch onto the bag. Next up, sew the bag pieces together at the top. Grade the lining's seam allowance. Press the seam allowances open. And now we have 2 long pieces, one for the exterior and one for the lining. From now on, we're entering steps unique to view B. So I'm going to slow down a bit and explain in a bit more detail. This step, 6B, sews the exterior and lining right side together at the straps, then turn right side out to look like this picture. Let's get started. If the exterior or the lining straps haven't been stay stitched before, do it now to both of them. The strap is inherently not stable since it's cut on the bias, and in the next couple steps we're going to stress the fabric by turning it. So if they're not stay stitched, the strap will get stretched unevenly and it may not stay flat anymore. Putting the exterior and lining right side together, sew the straps from breakpoint to breakpoint. On one side, just sew over everything. On the other side, we're gonna leave a huge gap like this. The size of the gap depends on how narrow the blue dotted lines are. When turning in the next step, the bag's body needs to squeeze through this blue dotted bottleneck, so it needs to be wide enough to accommodate the bag's body. For me, this gap is comfortable. For you, you'll decide for your own fabric. While you sew, try to have the needle land precisely on the breakpoint, because later we're gonna have another seam peeking up from there. Also, make sure to backstitch for all 3 seams. Before turning, we need to treat the curves to ensure that they stay flat. Here I trimmed the seam allowances at the curves, but I think it'd be better to trim the lining only. It's got grading and clip into the curves every half an inch or so. Then turn it right side out. After this, press in the seam allowance at the gap. I like to baste this gap close with a glue stick so that in the next step, I won't get distracted by the gap. With the strap turned, the next step is to sew and turn the back body. Personally, I think this step might be the most intensive step of the entire bag. Let's go and see. We want to flip the lining up and out of the way. Then bring 2 exterior pieces together. Matching up their dart legs, we're going to stitch this half circle at the bottom from breakpoint to breakpoint. The start and end is a bit tricky because at the breakpoints there are a lot of layers. I like to pinch the fabrics so that the breakpoints line up and then move the seam allowances out of the way. Then I stick a pin at the breakpoint to hold the fabric together until they're under a presser foot. Do your best to get the needle to land precisely on the seam joints, but don't sweat too much since a lot of things will smooth out themselves with a good press. Same with the lining, sew from breakpoint to breakpoint, but this time we need to leave a gap for turning. My gap is about 4 inches or 10 centimeters at the bottom. The strap of the bag is actually inside right now. Just make sure to put them somewhere out of the way. Again, try to see if you can pick up the seam from the previous seam joints at the start and at the end. Now again, we'll treat the seam allowances. From left to right, we clip into the exterior at the curves, trim the lining at the curves, and trim down seam allowances at the breakpoints since this spot is very bulky. And then press the seam allowance open for both the exterior and the lining. Finally, turn the bag right side out by pulling on the strap through the hole at the lining. The bag has been turned twice now, so it looks a bit beaten up and saggy. To finish up this step, it's time for a good round of pressing. Finally, our last step is to seal the holes left out earlier. There are 2, one at the straps and another at the back lining. The hole at the lining can be sewn up with a whip stitch. If you're impatient, you can edge stitch the 2 lining layers together. For the strap, we have 2 choices here. The first choice is to top stitch the strap with 2 seams, the red one and the white one here in the picture. This top stitching stabilizes the strap so that it won't roll on the shoulder. The other option is to top stitch the entire bag, starting and finishing at the same breakpoint. You'll notice that we go through the bag body twice, at the front and at the back. So at the bag's bottom, there's 1 stitch line at either side, like this. If you decide to do this option, there's a bit of hand basting to do. We'll need to baste along the bag's side and bottom, right at the seam. This is so that when we top stitch, the layers won't shift against one another. After this basting step, we can go ahead and start top stitching all around. And with that, our bag is finished. Giving it a final press and we're done with this bag. I hope this video gives you everything you need to make it yourself, and I'm excited to see what you make. If you do make the bag, let me know by tagging me at the socials. They're in the video description below. To get started, check out the sewing pattern and have fun!